we had an example of parents who, based on historical decisions of removal, their kids on average had a 70% chance that they were going to lose benefits at age 18. And we asked those parents about their beliefs, and over 50% thought their kid had no chance of losing benefits. So they just didn't know that this was an option.
Critics of social welfare programs often talk about how payments can disincentivize work. But is that always the case? Welcome to the Chicago Booth Review podcast, where we bring you groundbreaking academic research in a clear and straightforward way. I'm Hal Weitzman, and today I'm talking with Chicago Booth's Rebecca Dizon Ross about her research on how parents of disabled children think about the social safety net and investing in their kids' human capital. Could giving them better information help shape their thinking and behavior? Rebecca Dizon Ross, welcome back to the Chicago Booth Review podcast.
Oh, thank you. Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's such fun talking with you last time about exercise and personalization. But this time we want to talk about another area of your research, which is about the social safety net and how parents invest for their children's human capital, developing their children's human capital. Maybe we should start here. What was the conventional wisdom that you were trying to test in this research?
So the question is, how will parents adjust their spending on their kids' education if they know their kid is going to get social safety net benefits in adulthood? So it's sort of this dynamic effect over time where the thought experiment is, if a parent knows for sure that their kid is going to receive government benefits in adulthood, how will the parent invest differently when the child is still a child? And so the conventional wisdom was that the parent would spend less if they knew their kid was going to get social safety benefits in adulthood. And that's for two reasons. One is what economists would call an income effect, which just simply means they expect their kid to have more money in adulthood. And if one of the primary goals of investing in education is to prepare them to earn money, then they kind of need that less because they'd already have money through the social safety net. So that's one effect, is sort of they'd invest less because they wouldn't think the kid would really need it as much. And then the other channel is a little more subtle. It's that since many social safety net programs have basically higher effective marginal tax rates because the benefits go away as you earn more. So it basically means people face a high effective marginal tax rate. And so because they'd be facing a high tax rate on their earnings, that means the returns to education would be lower because basically some of the extra money they'd earn as a result of education would be taxed away. And so that's that kind of decreases the financial incentive for investing in education. And so kind of standard models would then predict parents might invest less as a result of that as well.
Okay. All right. So that was the conventional wisdom
Yes.
that you were testing.
Mm-hmm.
And what you found was there was what you call a belief gap among parents about their children's future eligibility. First of all, tell us what's the program that you're talking about, the Social Security program?
Yes. So we look at these ideas in the context of Supplemental Security Income in the U.S., or SSI. So SSI is now the largest cash welfare program in the U.S. It, I think, has almost 6 million adults and around 1 million children recipients. And so for both kids and adults, the program just gives monthly cash benefits that are for like kid recipients. It's a lot of money. It's somewhere around, I think by now, like $12,000 roughly dollars a year, which is around 50% of median income for these households. So it's a huge amount of money they're getting from their kids. And in order to enroll in the program, you both have to have low income or be poor, and then also be disabled. So for the kid recipients, it's about the family's income or wealth, and then the kid's disability status.
So this is a program that for families that are below the poverty line,
Mm-hmm.
and where the child is disabled, not the parents.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Well, so SSI as a whole, and this becomes important in sort of the research, it's for kids and adults. So there's also adults who earn it, and it's about their own disability status. But then when kids are on it, it's about.
But you're specifically looking at when the kids would be earning.
We're looking at the kids, but we're looking at the impact of parents' beliefs about whether their kid will receive it in adulthood on the kids when they're children. So it's basically like the ideal experiment and we tried to approximate that, would be telling parents, your child is definitely going to continue receiving this benefit in adulthood versus telling other parents your child will definitely not continue receiving this benefit in adulthood. And then we see how do they behave differently when their kids are kids.
Okay, fascinating. And this is really the biggest
Cash welfare these days. Yes, exactly. Because of the decrease in other like AFDC and things like that. It's the largest cash welfare program.
Huh. Okay, so as I was saying, you found there was this...
It's like about 10% of kids below the poverty line or something like that are receiving it. So
Okay.
it's a really high share. And a lot of the growth in the kids program has been in things like ADHD, autism spectrum, so social and behavioral disorders. And so many of them are not necessarily as severe as some people might think when you just hear as a program designed for the disabled.
Okay, so as we were saying earlier, you found this belief gap among parents about their children's future eligibility to receive this benefit. So, and then that differs from what we might have expected. So tell us about that belief gap.
As I mentioned, SSI has both a kids program and an adults program, and the criterion to be on them are the same. You have to be both poor and disabled, but critically, the definition of what it means to be disabled changes. So for a kid, the definition of disability is about whether you can engage in age-appropriate activity. And so that's why there's been huge growth in things like ADHD, autism spectrum disorder, which make it hard to say sit still in school. However, after age 18, so in adulthood, the definition is about ability to work. And so for lots of the things where you can meet the kid standard, it's hard to meet the adult standard. And so for many people who have these type of social and behavioral disorders, say like 80% of people with certain of these diagnoses are actually kicked off the program at age 18. So when you hit age 18, you're reevaluated under the adult standard, and lots of people with certain diagnoses are removed. So that's the context on the program. So the question is, well, do people know this? Like, are parents aware that if their kid gets this, that they'll, and has a certain diagnosis, that they'll in all likelihood be removed? And that's where there's this beliefs gap, where the answer is no. A lot of parents whose kids have a very high chance of removal because they have these diagnoses where they can actually work, so they will likely get removed, are unaware. They just know that there's a kids program and an adults program, and so they think their kid is going to get benefits for the rest of their lives. And so what we were doing is we said, because they basically overestimate the likelihood of getting benefits in the future, we can do an information experiment where we tell some of them, hey, actually, your kid has a really high chance of removal. And so that's going to let us see, well, what impact does it have if they think their kid is going to be on the program in the future versus if they don't think their kid is going to be on.
So the belief gap is just, you're testing whether it's an information gap.
Yes, exactly. Yes. The belief gap is just the sort of the method through which we are able to answer our big research question.
Right. They don't know.
Yes, exactly.
How strict it is, how strict the requirements are. So they're assuming that things are going to carry on as they are.
Exactly. So like we had a sample of parents who, based on historical decisions of removal, their kids on average had a 70% chance that they were going to lose benefits at age 18. And we asked those parents about their beliefs, and over 50% thought their kid had no chance of losing benefits. So they just didn't know that this was an option. Kind of average across the sample was that they thought there was, say, a 20% likelihood. So that was a huge gap. Like 70% of these kids were actually going to be removed, and parents thought it would be maybe 20. So there's a big information gap, and that's what we exploit to do our experiment, where we told them this information. We told a randomly selected set, hey, actually, your kid has a 70 or 80 or 90. It was specific to their diagnosis and other characteristics, chance of being removed at age 18. And so then we got to see whether, as a result, they increased their investment in their kids' education because they thought that they now knew that their kid was not going to be on there, in all likelihood would not be getting social safety net benefits. So our project kind of had two goals. One was to answer this kind of theoretical question we started with, which is what's the impact of your future beliefs of the social safety net on decisions today, but was also to test an intervention we thought could improve the kids' outcomes, because we thought, according to the conventional wisdom, that telling parents this would actually make them invest more in their kids' education, and so would help their kids' ultimate outcomes.
Have you ever wondered what goes on inside a black hole, or why time only moves in one direction, or what is really so weird about quantum mechanics? You should listen to Why This Universe. On this podcast, you'll hear about the strangest and most interesting ideas in physics, broken down by physicists Dan Hooper and Sharma Waxman. If you want to learn about our universe from the quantum to the cosmic, you won't want to miss Why This Universe, part of the University of Chicago Podcast Network. Rebecca, in the first half, we talked about your research about the social safety net, this program, supplemental security income, and parents' understanding or misunderstanding of it, and the likelihood that their children would be considered eligible when they became adults, and then how that affect their investment decisions. So tell us, you were in the middle of explaining how the experiment worked. You tried to inform or change parents' beliefs about this eligibility. And I have to give a shout out to our Chicago Booth Review video team, the award-winning Josh Stunkel and Ray Zane, multi-award winning, right? Josh Stunkel and Ray Zane, who helped you to make videos to inform the parents. Tell us about what they did, what you did, and then ultimately what effect it had on the parents.
We wanted to give parents information about how likely their kid was to be kicked off of SSI. So, for example, we wanted to tell we predicted for each parent how likely their kid was based on their kid's diagnosis, severity, things like that. And so let's say a parent their kid had an 80% chance of being removed at age 18. We wanted to tell them your kid has an 80% chance of being removed and have them absorb that information. And so we started off by several pilots where we were we sent parents kind of like information cards where it had like a little graphic, and we had them do this online survey where they're sort of reading over things. And then after showing them this information, we'd ask them, so what do you think about the chance your child would be removed? And our information was having zero effect on their beliefs. So they were just somehow the way we were designing it was like not working at all. And so we were like, we need a better way to get in. Let's try a video. And so we were like, how can we design a video? And I was like, wait a second. The Chicago Booth Review team has done some really good videos about my research. Maybe they'd be willing to help us. And so they really saved our lives because they made these awesome videos that really walked parents through it and explained to them exactly their child's likelihood of removal with these great graphics and things like that. And once we started with these videos, then suddenly parents started understanding what we were saying, and we moved their beliefs. And so that really enabled the whole experiment to happen.
How do you explain that? That's fascinating in itself.
Well,
they're not reading this stuff or not taking it seriously if it's printed?
Exactly. I think so. Just you get little handouts in the mail.
Right.
You're clicking through something on an online survey, and they're probably just clicking through the slides, you know what I mean? Just trying to get to the next question. So it's just hard to get people to really focus on something.
It's fascinating in itself, just the medium because all sorts of organizations have tried different media, right? Text messages and letters that look very official, telling you you've used more electricity than your neighbor or whatever to try to nudge different kinds of behavior.
No,
it does suggest that maybe those, we should think more about the medium as much as the message anyway.
I do. That was a key takeaway for me as well. And, I think a lot is also specific to the population. So this is a relatively low income population. Actually, a lot of the parents are on the program. So many of the parents also have disabilities. And so some might be specific to this population, but I definitely think the medium really matters is a key thing that I have found in doing information projects.
Okay. Josh, are you available if policymakers are listening? Are you available to make videos to nudge behavior among populations? He's not being drawn. He's nodding his head. Okay. So tell us about how these videos work. How did they change the behavior of the parents?
Yes. So the first kind of thing that we tested was, did they affect parents' beliefs? Like, were they actually effective in conveying the message? And there they were. We really moved parents' beliefs about how likely it was that their kid would lose benefits. And so then, of course, we then looked at, well, does that then affect how much they spend on their kids' education or how much they try to prepare their kids for the workforce? And there we found a very precise no. So we did not find the effect we were expecting. We thought it would lead to these nice positive impacts on educational spending, and we didn't see any of that. And we had a large sample.
Just to be clear, so they changed what they thought, but they didn't change how they acted.
Exactly. They changed what they thought. And it wasn't just, we were worried at first after we saw these results. Well, maybe they can answer this question, but they haven't fully internalized it. So we did things like we asked them about a hypothetical insurance product they could purchase, like insurance that would give them payments if their kid lost disability. And so we saw a big impact on take up of that. So people were able to internalize it. They knew how to make decisions based on it, but they then didn't change what they were doing for their kids. Another thing that they did, though, was the parents changed how much they worked themselves. So we see in over the course of the next year, the parents worked more. So they did internalize that their household would need more money, but the way that they kind of addressed that was through working more themselves, not investing more in their kids'
What
education.
was the investment you were looking for in the kids?
What was the specific investment? So we looked at sort of a range of things. We looked at kind of spending on potential tutoring opportunities, spending on career resources. We helped parents to enroll. There's these state provided services that are designed to help people in this population to plan for their future education and workforce development. So basically, the exact type of service you would want to invest more in if you knew your kid was going to need to be working. And we saw some people took those services up, so people thought it was valuable, but our treatment had zero effect on the take-up of it. So parents were just not behaving differently in respect to preparing their kids for the future, which was kind of unexpected to us.
Okay. And so how do you explain it?
Yeah. So, one piece of the puzzle, I think, is that parents worked more themselves. So to make up for the future income loss, they worked more themselves. But that doesn't fully explain it. Like sort of, in a classic model, they would also prepare their kids more. They wouldn't just do one or the other. And so that answer seems to be a combination through our kind of the work we did, seems to be a combination of two things. One thing is very unsurprising, especially to non-economists, which is that parents aren't just investing in their kids' education because they want the future income stream or like treating it like a financial accountant. Like these parents wanted their kids to go as far as they could in school, even though there was this social safety net that was sort of disincentivizing that decision. So there's other things parents care about other than sort of the financial returns to education. They might want their kid to be educated because it helps them become good citizens. They just think education is important for other reasons. And so they were already kind of doing a lot for their kids, even when the social safety net was kind of disincentivizing that behavior. So that's one piece of the puzzle. And then the other piece seems to be that these parents, it's a relatively poor sample. So there's only so much they can do for their kids. And so since they were already investing, because they wanted their kids to finish school, and since there's, a limit on how much they have time for, they were sort of already at the cap of what they could do, even with the social safety net sort of disincentivizing that behavior. And so when we told them, hey, actually, you should invest more, they were kind of like, we're already doing all we can, effectively. And so that suggests that the results could be very different in like a different sample that's less constrained. So that's something we're interested in looking at in the future. But that seems to be kind of the three parts of the story: are parents working more, parents investing for reasons that have nothing to do with just the financial return, and then parents sort of already being at the limit of what they can do.
That makes sense. And there's probably also there's a sense that if you haven't done it before, there's probably a bigger leap to start doing it.
There could be some of that sticking behavior as well, yeah.
So I know that part of this research was you actually surveyed experts in child development and education and asked them what they predicted would happen. Tell us what they said and how that compared with what you actually found.
Yeah, so they expected, probably not too surprisingly, they expected the conventional wisdom to hold. So they expected that us giving this information to parents, that their kids were likely to be removed, they thought that would have a big positive effect on how much parents would spend on their kids' education, just like we had thought when we designed the study. And so that really contrasted with the precise zero effect that we actually found on spending. So they really overestimated what the impact would be. And so that really highlights that it was quite different from the conventional wisdom. And so I think these expert surveys are actually becoming more and more popular. And I think one nice thing is that they just help codify what the conventional wisdom is so that you can compare your results with it. Because I feel like when people are actually reading studies, they sort of sometimes manage to convince themselves that they knew the answer beforehand. You explain and they're like, oh, I already knew that was going to happen. And so I think having an expert survey, you can be like, well, you probably didn't because most people expected this other thing. And so it's just a good way to be able to contrast what people would have expected with what actually happened.
So, I mean, your research then has big implications for conventional wisdom in various areas, about incentives in general.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, I think in particular about this sort of dynamic effect of the social safety net on kids earlier. Oh, you mean like through this idea of having these expert surveys?
Yeah. I mean, did you go back to the experts and say, well, this is what we found. How do you make sense of this?
Yes. I don't think we actually did that. We should do that. But so, yeah, there's this great platform that is what we used, which is researchers, I think based out of Berkeley, originally started this platform for doing these types of expert surveys. And so they're becoming more and more common in economics, at least, to do them, to be able to contrast your work with them.
So let's talk beyond, as you say, beyond just this population, beyond just this research. What do you think the implications are for policymakers?
So the conventional wisdom suggests that redistribution through the social safety net might have a big cost, right? So if you are giving social safety net benefits in adulthood to people who need them, the conventional wisdom is that, well, but actually that might be hurting some kids because their parents aren't investing as much because they know their kid can just earn benefits if they don't get prepared. And so our research suggests that that's not happening. So it actually suggests that redistribution has less of a cost than we might have thought. And so it means that the optimal level of redistribution is higher than people would have thought under the conventional wisdom. So it essentially suggests policymakers should be redistributing more than they are because
there's not that disincentive.
Exactly. Because
we always hear about when we talk about benefits.
Exactly. It doesn't have this disincentive effect on kids, which could have been a really bad disincentive because it's hard to make up for things like, education spending later. And so it doesn't have that disincentive. And so we should do more of it.
You said you're continuing with this line of research. Briefly tell us what's next.
Our work suggested there's very important non-financial benefits of education and of work. And so our next project is looking at trying to understand exactly what are some of the non-financial benefits of work, and among this population, among people who are sort of on the margin of getting benefits or working, how important are the non-financial benefits of work? And does receiving benefits actually make these non-financial benefits more important? So for example, you can imagine if you're receiving SSI, then there's maybe some stigma attached to that, and that makes it actually more important for you to work because you're sort of reestablishing your place in society. And so if that's the case, then it could kind of explain that social safety benefits don't have as big a disincentive effect on adult work in this case. And so we're kind of trying to explore those connections and understand the impact of receiving benefits in adulthood on sort of the reasons you might want to work or your take-up of different job opportunities.
Fascinating. Well, thank you so much, Rebecca Dizon Ross, for coming back on the Chicago Booth Review podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. A delight as always.
That's it for this episode of the Chicago Booth Review podcast, part of the University of Chicago Podcast Network. For more research, analysis, and insights, visit our website at chicagobooth.edu/review. When you're there, sign up for our weekly newsletter so you never miss the latest in business-focused academic research. This episode was produced by Josh Stunkel. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and please do leave us a 5-star review. Until next time, I'm Hal Weitzman. Thanks for listening.